Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful in the studio today, back working on my beginner series, putting a junk journal together from old books and old book pages and some extra things, to the point where I'm going to be show you what I did off camera and then sewing the signatures in. The other thing that I wanted to share real quick though that I've been doing, I try to work on this kind of stuff every day as I'm working because it has drying time, but I go through a lot of coffee stain, tea stain, any kind of grungy paper. And so I did some more. I'm always looking for a quicker, faster way to do things. And so I wanted to share this one with you too. So I keep this spray bottle in my room, and my flooring luckily is something that can be mopped up. So if you have like any kind of vinyl flooring, something like that, anything but carpet, I would say, I guess, or hardwood that you could work on, I do put a bag down. I'm not just spraying this right on the floor, but it's just convenient because if I do it in my shop rather than outside, I don't have to worry about wind. It might take a little bit longer to dry depending on the time of year or whatever, but I like doing it because it's always there. I see it, and so it gets my attention to that I need to do more or whatever. So I keep the spray bottle and I just kind of put in whatever. Sometimes it's tea. This bottle was half tea, but then I had some of that rusty liquid. If you've watched, if you follow me, I did a rusty thing recently. I saved that rusty liquid, and so I added, this was probably about half tea, and then I added some coffee and that had maybe a tiny bit of that rusty in it. So it came out kind of a weird gray, darker brown color. And so I wanted to share how that looks and how I do it now, that another fast, easy kind of way. So I open up a garbage bag, the big black lawn leaf bags, and open it up so that it's just a nice big flat surface. And then I actually started spraying the bag before I put any paper down, just getting the whole bag wet, and it's all wrinkly then, And then that way when you put the paper down on it, if you have that bag dry and then you put this paper down dry and then you spray the top, paper will curl right away, and then you have to flip it over, and sometimes that's kind of hard because it's already kind of wet. So I found the easiest thing to do, spray down the bag so that there's liquid over the whole thing, it's all misted, and then when you lay your paper down, just stick your hand down like that on each piece, and it sticks it to the plastic bag, and that way when you go to spray the top of it, it doesn't curl up, it just lays flat. So I found that to be the really easy, super easy thing. And then not only that, you get the spray effect on one side, but then you get this kind of wrinkly creased kind of look on the other side, so your sides don't look the same. And I kind of like that because it kind of gives you two different patterns. So I haven't even ironed these or anything yet. This is just how they came off. I would say it took less than an hour to dry in my room. And so now I've already put down another batch. So that was just another easier way I found to coffee stain your paper. And again, you can use tea or anything, as long as your floor is protected. So I've been using the same garbage bag for months. So the nice thing is all the different liquids and things that I've used are still on that garbage bag. So the colors are coming out kind of neat. So what I want to get to though is my, this book that we started working on. And I wanted to show you what I did off camera last time. So I've done, I think this will be the fourth video maybe. I did one on how I choose books, the old books that are falling apart to take apart. I also went over some copyright in case you want to scan anything for sale or, to use in your digitals. So I kind of showed how I got to this point for the cover, which I'm going to do more to, I think. And then I put together the signatures. And then, the last, after the last video, I went through, and there's certain things that I think are easier to do before you sew these into the book. Now, you don't have to do those steps. Maybe this is not your style. And so I did another one today. So this doesn't have to take as long as I'm taking explaining it and doing it. I'm just trying to cover kind of everything that I'm figuring out as I go for beginners. So this is a signature. Again, if you're just seeing this one for the first time, go back and watch the other ones. This is a 5-signature book. And a signature, if you're brand new, is a group of folios. So if you take a piece of paper, fold it in half, now it's called a folio, and then you put multiple folios together and you have a signature. So you're going to hear that term a lot in junk journals, and it took me, and I always just kind of see new people or what is that? I don't know what you're talking about. And I was the same way. So this, I did my signatures for this book that I'm trying. This is the first time I'm doing this kind of style of thing. I did 5 folios per signature, and then I did 5 signatures. And what that's going to do, it's going to kind of spread my signatures out evenly throughout my spine. You could do a book that has 1 signature, but then it's going to all come kind of tight here at the spine and then be kind of flaring out like this. You could do 2 signatures, 3, however many you want to do. But leave plenty of room in your spine so that as you add things to it, you don't end up like this, which I tend to do anyway. So this one may end up being full. I think I've yet to create one that didn't end up a little gator mouth. So I did this one just because I wanted to show. This one I did 2 signatures. It's a smaller book with a smaller spine. And so I did more pages in each signature, but I just did, as you can see, 2 signatures. And I'll kind of show you that a bit more. But see how it wants to flare open? They kind of want to do that anyway. If I set maybe something heavy on this, it'll kind of get, you know, a little flattened out. But I'm okay with it. I'm probably going to put some kind of little closure on this anyway. So I'm going to keep referring back to this one, I think, as I move forward here. So what I did off camera last time was I took each signature. We had gone through how I look at things to see if I want to make the pages thicker for whatever I'm going to do, to adding pockets and things like that to thin paper. You know, you want it to be reinforced sometimes. So I went through this entire one and made sure that I had any thin, like dictionary page, some dictionary pages almost tissue papery. I made things a little thicker. And then I had added pockets where I wanted to some and reinforced those, and then reinforced any spines and showed you a few ways to do that over the last video. So now everything, I feel good about how reinforced everything is. So the next step that I did off camera was to take all of these over to my sewing machine and decide where I wanted to stitch or not, and some different examples in here. So I'm going to go through each one and show you what I did. The other thing that I did that again is optional, you might not have a sewing machine, so you don't want to do that. Maybe you don't like the look of all the stitching. You can also hand stitch if you want, or do lines with like a faux stitch look. So I went through and stitched, and I'll show you. And then I also went through with my Distress Oxide Vintage Photo, which is kind of my favorite. You may have a different favorite, maybe Walnut Stain, or maybe you like the Distress Ink instead. Distress Oxide, if you're brand new, is different than the Distress Ink. It has a reaction to water. So it gives you, if you were to splatter on it and that sort of thing, you'll get a different look. So let's just go through so I can show you the different stitching. And then I've done some spots where I show you what it looks like if you haven't used the Distress Oxide. But I wanted to go ahead and do it. For one, it's my style. I like things to look grungy. I don't like white edges. And I just like those little details of things like stitching and aging and that sort of thing. So this one, I stitched just a straight stitch around the entire edge. And I didn't do here, I just went around these edges. I didn't really need to. I wasn't attaching anything here, so I didn't worry about doing that. I've done it on some others. And then what I like to do, probably the color of thread that this was, my 2 favorite colors of thread to use are kind of just this tea-stained looking gold color in any brand kind of thing. This is just all-purpose thread, but I like this color a lot because it's just really kind of vintagey and natural. The other one that I use is black. So I've done both in here too, so you can see the difference. So this is just a straight stitch. And then what I like to do is I did it from this side so that you can see how the stitching looks, you know, from the front versus from the back side. On the back side, when you stitch paper, it makes like a puncture hole, and it's really white spots because it's punching through paper and the inside is white usually. So I take my dauber with my Vintage Photo on it. Where is my dauber? And I just go over all that and knock that white down. And that's just me. To me, it gives it a more finished look, and then you have no white spots showing. And it also kind of darkens up my thread so it stands out more as an accent, which is kind of what I'm going for. So I did that one around the outsides. This next one, I did different examples to show you. So if you're sewing something like a pocket, if you don't want the stitching to show on this side, you would stitch the stitching on the pocket first. That way you could even go around this edge if you want, and then glue it to your paper. I had already glued this to the paper and then decided I wanted it stitched. So here's what you get. You know, you'll have it show through on the other side. Now what I could have done is I could have stitched it and went all the way to this edge and around. And then that way on this side, it would at least kind of look like a big rectangle. I don't know what I'm going to do on this page, so I could always cover this up if it bothers me. But I wanted to show you, just to keep that in mind on pockets, you know, that you're going to see it from the other side. This one, I used a zigzag stitch, just a big loose zigzag stitch. And again, you can see that I have used my vintage photo around all the edges, which just kind of makes everything stand out. I really liked that little zigzag stitch on this edge. This is where I had reinforced to make this little flap. So just added a little detail to that. Again, that may not be your style, but I wanted to go and do all of this before I put my book together. This one I did not stitch. This one I did not stitch. And this one was that one that had the 2 large dictionary pages that I put together in order to make pockets just with folding the paper. So I went ahead and I stitched this one, if you can see, all the way around, including on the spine side, because that is the bottom and edge of a pocket. So now that is all just reinforced even more. So I went ahead and stitched that one, and that is that for signature. This one, I only did the distressing with the vintage photo around the edges of that, and I did not stitch that. This was already tea stained paper, so it was already kind of getting that look. This one, I just did a little bit of, very little, because this paper's kind of thin, of the antiquing, but I did not do it on this side, if you can see. So you can kind of tell the difference maybe in the light, I don't know. And then this is plain. So you can kind of just see if that's your style, just to have something look a little more grunged up or not. You use that. And, you know, there's other colors. There's parchment ones, and there's walnut stain and that sort of thing. So you'll just, you know, find if you're new and haven't purchased any of those. These are from Ranger. They're Tim Holtz. And if I had to pick just one, say you're just starting out, if I had to choose just one to buy, it would be this Distress Oxide in the vintage photo color, because it's a great color for everything. And doing the oxide instead of the ink, it allows you to alter, get more different finishes looking out of that. So this was one of my digitals. And then I added this music sheet to make this pocket. So I went ahead and I didn't stitch this side at all. I stitched around here and I stitched around here, including on the spine side, because I had pockets that I wanted to have reinforced. And you don't have to do that again. I mean, they're glued, they're fine. But because I do like stitching, I kind of look for pockets as a place that I want to do that. So this one's stitched on this side, but not on the other, and they're gonna have that there. So this one I didn't stitch at all, and I didn't antique it at all. You can see it was done on tea stain paper, but it's pretty plain. So if I want to go, I think I'll do this one so you can see the difference, especially on something like this that's a digital. If you add that distressing, now this is gonna be pretty sticky because I just recently, my inker was dry, and so I used the re-inker, which is, you don't want to just add water to this if it gets dry, because it's a formulated thing, you know, this oxide. So you actually buy a little bottle of re-inker and re-ink your pad. So I'm just kind of getting the edges at first. And the deal, if you haven't watched one of Tim's videos, is you start on a craft mat or something like that, and I'm starting off the mat, and in a swirling motion I'm just going onto the paper that way, and it just gets you know, a little at a time, and then you can like get the corners more if you want more just in the corners. And it kind of gives you that distressed look. So I'm going to go around all this real quick here. And because these look like different sections, I'm going to fold my paper so that I get my edges. And you can add as little, you know, as much or as little as you want. But you can see why I did this off camera, because you just turn on the music and go. But it can take a long time, you know, to get an entire book done. So I'm going to fast forward now so that you can see this finished. Okay, now you can see the difference. I did it pretty dark here, which maybe I normally wouldn't do it that dark, but I really liked it to show up against how beige this is. So you're not going to really see it in the book opened up all like that anyway. So I liked that I got all those edges. It just makes it have that little more vintagey, dirty look. And same with my tea stain. Even though this was already tea stained, it highlights any sort of folds or cracks or little, you know, creases or anything in there, and just makes it look older. So I just love doing that. Okay, so that is that one, and I think that went in this one. Okay, so you see how just aging it up like that, it all just kind of gives the whole book, even though, you know, I've used a variety of different papers, different digitals from different things. It has a cohesiveness once you do something throughout a book, like adding the vintage photo or adding the stitching. When you start kind of sprinkling things throughout an entire book, it kind of pulls everything together. And then other things that I do later on when I start decorating will do that too. So in this one, again, it was a digital done on tea stain paper, no stitching, just the vintage photo on that. This is another one. I did not do any stitching. And because it was already the color, I had already distressed this piece before I even put this little folio together. So I didn't even do any on this. I could do a little more around this piece if I wanted, but I think that's fine. So that one. This one, again, I did stitching around the edge, but I did it with the zigzag stitch. And this one, I think I may have already aged that, but you can see on this side is aged with vintage photo and this side is not. And I wanted you to see that difference. So now I need to finish this one. And you can't really tell as much on this one because it's on white paper. But let's see. So this is the front side of my stitching. So you see that the holes are real clean. But on this other side, if I can get a good, you kind of see how the needle pokes through and you end up with this paper kind of bunched up on this side. It's not so noticeable on this one because it's on white paper, like I said, but I like to get rid of those white dots. So by going over this whole thing, it darkens up my thread a little bit, but it kind of makes those holes look finished. I don't know if that's the right word, but to me, it's just kind of like if say you're doing this, you're new to this, and you think, why does my thing look a little flat compared to other ones that I see, you know, other people's journals or whatever? Maybe it doesn't look as finished. And I think it's sometimes these little details, these little finished steps, which can come, you know, later on in your decorating process. But I just think those little details, every layer you add, adds kind of a richness to it. So you can kind of see that looks more cohesive now. Obviously, I've done a little bit more on this one, but this was a different paper, so it was already a different color. But I kind of like that because it gives some contrast. So I've done this a little bit over here. So I'm going to go ahead just for fun to make this not look like a page that's going to stand out like a sore thumb. And, you know, a lot of these are going to be covered up anyway, but probably not all the way to the edge. So I like to get my edges all sort of finished looking. Okay, that one. And then I think these are all distressed already. Then I had a music one, and I didn't stitch that. And then this one. And this one I didn't stitch either, but I did go ahead and do the distressing with the vintage photo. Did not do this page again, so you can see the contrast a little bit. It's subtle, you know. I think it's probably showing up to me more in real life than it is to you on camera. And then this one, this was another digital. This one I did do a little bit of the distressing. You can see just around the edges, not a lot. I think this was when my ink was kind of running out. I may have left this side. On a lot of them, I tried to leave one side so I could, you know, show you kind of the difference with and without. So that one, no stitching. This was another digital with just a little of the distressing with the vintage photo. And this one I switched my thread to black because of this magazine page was kind of black and off-white. So I switched to the black thread. And one thing that you can do is, if you say you feel like you're not comfortable with your stitching a straight line, you know, if you sew a lot, you know there's a guide there and you can kind of watch it and get a straight line. But if you can't, or you do make a mistake, I make mistakes sometimes even when I'm trying to do a straight line, go back a second time and make an intentional wavy line. Go crooked on purpose. And if you do that 2 or 3 times around, it's an interesting look. And then it kind of hides, it looks intentional. So I did that on this one where I just went around it twice. And I went crooked on purpose. And then used the vintage photo again on that one. And then this one, I did nothing except for the you know, distressing. And then this one again was with that gold thread on it. And just around the edges so that I caught the pockets on that. And this one you can kind of see too because it was on a colored paper. I've kind of gone over it already with this, but you can kind of see, you know, where this is the back side. When those all pop up, they kind of just, you know, stand out in not a good way. So I just do that and knock those down. And then this one did nothing. I did do on this side, I did do, you can see the distressing on the edges with the vintage photo. And it was on tea stain, so I didn't do this side. I just left that. I think that's okay. And then this again with the black. This was is pretty thin paper. So I had to be pretty careful. It's kind of fragile. But that one I did the zigzag in the black and then did the vintage photo around. And I think this one I haven't. This was a good one to show because it's black thread on a light paper, and then you can kind of see how those backside bumps are. So I can actually kind of do this and knock those. Oops. I need to be careful because this paper's kind of fragile. I don't think this is going to show up on camera very well because of the lighting in here, but it's doing a subtle change in color just around the edge, if you can see that. But it just, again, it ties it into the whole. I'm just trying to be extra careful here. It just kind of gives, oops, see, there you go, I'm tearing my paper. It just gives you that extra ambery kind of tea-stained look. So I don't know if you can see that difference now. Around the edge is a little darker. So I like that. I'm probably really going to need to do a corner pocket or something here to really reinforce this now. So that'll be a good idea. I'll need to do a corner pocket there. Okay, so I think that one. Uh-oh, now I'm getting mixed up. This was here. I think this was this one. Getting my signatures mixed up. This one I did not stitch. I just used the vintage photo. Same with this one. Same with this one. So I only stitched one in this one. So You can do, you know, I went ahead and a lot of these were kind of blank pages, so I didn't really need to or feel like I wanted to do a lot of stitching, but I did at least one just so that it looked like it belonged in my book. Okay, so that is that. Now we are ready to sew them into here. So for this one, to stitch them in, I'm going to do a simple pamphlet stitch. It's the one you'll probably end up using the most. I've been watching Roxy Creations for a while now. I've wanted to learn some things from her. One of them is she is like perfectly imperfect, if that makes sense, and I mean that as a compliment. She doesn't mind if things are straight or wonky or whatever, and everything's gorgeous. So I'm really trying, I can be a perfectionist. I've been trying to embrace imperfection and not worry so much about it, but that's hard for me. So I'm gonna kind of measure when I do this one, but just for fun. And I just did one where I didn't measure and I just poked holes. So I want to share both in a way because you're all different levels of doing this. You may have been doing this longer than I have, or maybe you're brand new. Maybe you're a perfectionist, maybe you're not a perfectionist. So I wanted to kind of show that if you don't really want to take the time to measure and all that, and you really don't care, it's fine. It'll end up looking great the way that I'm going to do this one. So this one, the beginning of this journal was done exactly the same way. I used a different kind of fabric. I just used a piece of my rusted fabric, which I'm going to use. You know, this is just some cotton fabric that I've rusted. I'm going to use that for the spine too on this one. And I just took my signatures, which is what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to do a 5-hole just like I did on this one. But in this case, I did go ahead and I measured the first one. I got everything together, which is what I'm going to do here, and I'll just grab this one to start first. Because my pages are different sizes and heights, as I mentioned before, I want to start out with one of the taller ones that's going to get all the 5 holes captured. And then like this one might not. This one I might only get 3. This one also. And you can stagger them. You don't have to have them be centered always. You know, maybe this one I want to have down starting at the bottom, just for a staggered look. But then you want to end up in the middle with one that's going to also capture all the 5 holes. So once you get your pages kind of arranged how you want them to be in that signature, then use some, these are just some giant paper clips or clamps or something. So just some kind of thing that you can hold it together. So I had it like this, and then I just took, you can eyeball it if you want. I like to do 5 versus 3 because it's going to capture more things, and I think it makes it sturdier overall to have 5 in there. So you could take a pencil or you can just take a pokey tool. I think I'll get this out of my way. So you can use a folded up towel. You want something under here that's softer so that you can poke right through. A magazine or something could work. I have this is from a recycled piece that I use, and it's great because it's nice and soft. So I'm just going to find my center again, and I'm just going to eyeball. So this is 4 halfway, a 1/2 inch in, a 1/2 inch in, and then kind of halfway between, and it might not be exact. I don't care if it's exact. Let's see, 1 inch. So 2 1/4 this way, 1 3/4 this way. So that's close enough. And each one of them doesn't have to be the same because, again, you're going to cover it up. But if you want it to, it can be. So what I did was I just grabbed my next one. Again, making sure I've got my things sort of mixed up here, that they're where you want them to be. And then you can just take this one that you've already done and put it inside. This is the easy, imperfect way. And if I can see my holes, I'm just going to go back. and poke and hope that I have it centered in that one. Okay, so you can just do that to all. I'm going to do that to all of these, and then I'll fast forward so you don't have to watch that. And then I'll get to stitching. So I'll be right back. Okay, now I have these all holes poked. If you do have your pages, say your signatures are all equal height and all of that, line them all up together, make your lines this way, and then if you care, and then your holes will be all even. Again, I'm trying to embrace not being perfect. Okay, so the next thing you're just going to do is stitch them in. I do want to punch my holes in this. When I did this one, I literally did it this way because I was just, I'm just trying to practice, like I said, not being perfect. I put everything in my book like this, and I kind of just let it settle in where it wanted to be. And while I was like that, I opened each one up and poked my holes through the spine. So they weren't exactly even, but that was okay. It came out fine because my pages are all, as you can see, all uneven anyway. So I think that's kind of what I like about like grungy kind of things like this, is they don't have to be perfect. So I kind of, like I said, I just set them in there and let them settle in where they wanted to be. This one, because I have 5, I think I have to be a little bit more careful. So I think I'm going to make 5 lines this way, just so that I get them spaced out correctly, I think is my plan. Embracing imperfect. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to try to eyeball my center. I'm just going to eyeball it and see if I can get oops, got my finger out of the way, a line there. So that we're going to say is my center. So I need 2 more on either side to make my 5. So I think I'll go to the outside now and make a line. And then I want to be in between those 2. And then the same on this side. I hope you're able to see this. I'll show you what it looked like in a second here. Oops. A line, and then kind of again in the middle of that. So again, not perfect. I just eyeballed it, but it's giving me somewhat of a guide. So you can see I've just drawn lines, and they're not perfect, okay? But I think it'll help me kind of stay where I want to be in here. And then honestly, I'm just gonna look, I'm just eyeballing so that these are sitting kind of the same distance from the top and the bottom. Actually, I'm gonna try this just for fun to see if it works. And I'm gonna make a mark where my hole is. Okay, you saw in the fast forward that I got really lazy, and I just decided to lay my signature down on the line, and actually I'll do this one too, and poke the hole where I saw it. It's just a little faster and good enough for me. These ended up off the line, so this way I know I'm keeping them spaced better apart from each other. Okay, so this is my first one. Okay, and again, I'll be fast forwarding so you don't have to watch this whole thing, but the next thing is I keep a little drawer of thread that I use for bookbinding things. And I don't know where my little wax thing is. So I have waxed thread, and that's what I'm going to use. I find it much easier. You can also wax your own thread, and I'm going to see if I can find my little thing. Okay, I couldn't put my hands on it. To wax, you can wax thread. There's a little thing, you can get it in the sewing section, Sewing Notions. They may have it in jewelry, may have one too in jewelry stuff, but it's a little plastic round thing that has slots on around it, and inside is a piece of wax. And you just run your thread. I would use something like upholstery thread or button thread. It's heavier. This is actually beading thread for jewelry. So something, you know, sturdier. You can use embroidery floss and just use like all 6 of the strands. And you can wax that too. So you can also wax it with just like this little, this is just a little tea light candle thing. This is already waxed, but you would just run it, you know, over the wax like that. And that makes your thread kind of grip better. So it's just going to be easier to pull tight and all that kind of thing. So I'm going to use this. So I'm going to use just a regular, you can use like just like a big giant crewel embroidery or a needle that has a blunt end. This one does have a sharp end. You can find needles. This one has a blunt end. And actually this one I may have made. I took a needle like this and nipped off the sharp end and then just filed it down with my jewelry tools. So it doesn't really matter. You're going to be sewing with it. So it doesn't need to be sharp because you've already poked your holes. I'm not going to cut this thread because I don't know how much I need. So I'll just wait. I'm just going to leave a little tail on there. So a pamphlet stitch is just a real simple thing. I'm going to start, I think, from the outside of my book because that's where I'll tie my knots. And I'm going to find my first hole, which is kind of hard from this side because it's got fabric on it. Let's see if I poke through here. I'll see where it is. So I'll be tying it from this side because I'm going to end up covering this up. If I can keep my thread in there. Oh, I'm hung up is why. Okay. So you start, this is the top of my book, which I know I have all turned around here. In the top of my first signature. And I'm going to go through that top hole. And then I'm going to go down to the next hole, which is really hard to see on this book page, and go through my next hole. Okay. And then I'm going to go through the next hole. So basically I'm just going in and out, and it's so hard to see these holes on this one. I think it'll be easier on the other pages, but and you can see I have way too much thread, so I'm going to kind of loosen this up a little bit because I know once I go in and out, I'll still have this much extra. I don't need that much. So I'm going to, oops, go this way, yeah. That's better. Okay. That way I don't waste any. So I know you can't see this. There's a stitch here and a stitch here. And then they alternate on this side. So now I'm going to go back through so all these will be filled in. So there'll be a stitch on the inside and on the outside. And then when I get to the end to finish this one, that's where I'm going to tie this one. So I will have just sewn one of my signatures into my book. So you just want to make sure everything's, you know, pretty tight. And now I can cut this off. And I've left this a little long, but I want to have enough to be able to tie that. And so I'm going to tie that at least 3 times. And now my next one. So that's one in. I can take these to use on the other one. This just makes it easier to keep your pages together while you're sewing them in. So my next one is this one. Hopefully I have not moved my holes. Make sure you have it going the right direction. And then I'm going to grab another thread. Where'd my needle go? Okay, and again, I'm going to start from the back. So I know I'm going to go for lengthwise. I know I'm going to go one way and then back the other way. Okay, I think I have these all in, and I think if anyone had any doubt about my beginner status, I proved it in this video. So I haven't done a lot of these, so but you can see 5 signatures, how much the wax thread helps. It just grips much better, nice and sturdy. All the pages are in great. You know, I feel good about how spaced they are. I still have lots of room in my book to add things. And then I just need to, whatever I'm going to do to decorate, and I haven't decided yet, I need to think about that. But you can see all my signatures in. All the pages feel good. Nice and sturdy. I have room to, there's where the first one ends. But it just, everything's just kind of nicely spaced and ready to be decorated. So I think I'm going to have fun working in this one, which is going to be kind of a similar style as far as the grunginess and all to the elocutionist, but it had a totally different kind of spine. And you can see this one is, you know, going to be a gator mouth. But it's a lot of fun to work in, similar kind of thing. So I have this one. I'm going to show you just real quickly what I plan to do on the spine. I'm not sure on this one what I'm going to do. When I started watching Rachel at Roxy Creations, I had never purchased a digital kit, and I was looking for something, and I think I had seen her before maybe, but anyway, I ended up buying one of her digital kits, and I've kind of been hooked ever since. So she does a lot of soft spines like this, putting fabric on them. And that's kind of what got me, well, it's what got me into doing her slow stitching thing that she just is finishing up, so that I could, you know, learn how to do some slow stitching. I thought that would be pretty to do fabric bindings and then slow stitch. So I'm going to do some stitching on this one. This was a piece of my rusted fabric where I used a big giant old rusty spring, so I got all these lines. So I'm kind of thinking of doing some Just some real simple, maybe just like cantha stitching along those lines, but maybe with some color, just to get a little more colorful on there. And then I'll be gluing that on. But see, then it covers up all that stitching. And I could do something on here. I thought about maybe, you know, gluing a key on, or maybe setting an eyelet and things with kind of a tie closure, and just having this be as like a little keyhole sort of thing for the hole. So I might do that. But this one, I didn't do any stitching or anything on. So if you don't want to do all the distressing like I've added, you know, around here, this one doesn't have any of that yet. So I wanted just to show you real quick. This is just with, you know, paper that I only reinforced, like this one. I think I only had to reinforce like 2 things. And this is all. I haven't even glued the pockets down or anything. I just wanted to see how it would be to just put the papers in, get them sewn in, and then work with it, you know, after everything's already sewn in. I reinforced this one because this paper was kind of breaky. I think it's getting caught on that. So once that's glued down, that won't do that. But again, I just did 2 signatures in this one. So it'll be fun to add, you know, envelope pockets and flips and that kind of thing. And there's plenty of room to work in this one too. So I'm kind of tempted. I have a whole bunch of old book covers that are ready to be turned into these kind of, you know, just grungy down and dirty journals. So I'm thinking, maybe let me know what you think in the comments if anyone would be interested. I'm thinking of making some up, and I'll put the cover on and, you know, decorate it up, whatever I'm going to do. And then just putting them in my Etsy shop like this. Maybe I'll close the pockets, you know, just do some basic things, but leave them empty journals so that if you don't want to build a book like that, that you can purchase one so that you can do all the decorating and journaling inside yourself. So let me know if anyone would be interested in purchasing something like that. And I'm going to get to work on getting the insides done of some of those other ones, and then getting some spines finished. The other thing that I'm working on are a digital kit. I had somebody ask me if I would do for international people, because shipping is so crazy and it takes so long, is to do some, instead of just these, you know, where you can buy the old paper, is do some book page, vintage ephemera kind of thing kits, so that you can just, you know, basically print all this out yourself. I could even do the graph papers and the dyed papers and that kind of thing. But one thing I thought I might do that would be fun is to, I've been scanning. That's what I've been busy the last couple of days, scanning, and I have so much more to do still. But I'm scanning book covers and the spines and the different parts, and pages and title pages and all of that, so that I can put them in digitals. And I thought this would be really fun for this one maybe, which I've already now picked up, or this fabric, but to print this on fabric, and then you could actually use the spine of a old book and then do it on fabric and embroider on it or whatever, add to it, and then have that be your spine too. And it could be a different book, like this one's a different book, but I just kind of like that. So I'm trying to work on a kit, and it will get there at one point. But in the meantime, I'm going to finish this one up, I think, and put it in my Etsy shop. And that way, someone who wants to purchase a journal can. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.